Hey guys, I'm back, and what we're gonna do real quick is kind of give you a little illustration about race and what these terms can mean, um, because there's general terms being used, and for this class we want to specify what they mean. So in order to do that, we have to talk about history just a little bit, but generally speaking, the term black could be seen as an umbrella term. Let me move this for you guys. There we go. So, black has a lot underneath it. Now, when you consider historically what has been considered black, back in the day, you would hear terms like Negro, you would hear terms like Negroid, be kind of scientific about it, which wasn't really scientific. You would hear terms like mulatto, um, also colored, and what else would be under there? Let me think. Um, Biracial, even though biracial can mean just two races, a lot of times people assume biracial means black or white, but it's technically just bi and racial. Okay. Other things that you have to consider when talking about black are all of the things that could be called Afro and then fill in the blank. So this really just means, because of the fact that people were taken from Africa and brought to North, Central, and South America, you will have a lot of people who are Afro Brazilian, Afro Haitian, Afro Cuban, Afro Puerto Rican, or African American or Afro American back in the day they used to call as well. So this is just a connection between the historical fact that black really means of African descent or descent, from Africa. So that is a factual thing. For some reason, sometimes people want to distance themselves from this fact, and they'll say, I've heard some people, here in the States, they say, oh, why does it got to be African American? And so they want to distance themselves from that fact. But the fact still remains that black really encompasses a whole lot. Now, a lot of times when you're like Afro and fill in the blank, like Afro Brazilian, Afro Cuban, Afro Haitian, like you will speak Spanish. So a lot of the black Spanish speaking people will be under this category. And then a lot of times we don't think of that in America because we think if you speak Spanish, then you must be of some Latino descent. But it's true that there's a lot of mixture as well in those countries. So another thing, historically speaking, was that there was a one drop rule. And historically, this is around the Jim Crow times. And if you had anybody in your family that was black, then by default you were labeled black, or one of these terms. Generally speaking, the mulatto was a child of, as they said back in the day, pure white and a pure African. Those were the terms that they used. Colored really meant could be anything, light, mixed, dark skin, but color just meant you basically were not white. And then as well as there were always distinctions as to how black you were, right? So biracial obviously is like half, right? But then they had these terms like someone took the time to make up this octoroon, which means you were like an eighth black, and somebody did the math calculation to be a quadroon. That means you were a fourth. And in really no other racial breakdown do they really make this distinction. So it really historically goes to show you the significance of being black in the times of like Jim Crow, where you didn't have equal treatment, openly didn't have equal treatment and things like that. So a lot of times people tried to pass, and that means that if they passed as white, even though they were black, in those days, they would try to get better treatment in society by passing, and that had detrimental effects there as well, mentally, because you had to cut yourself off from your family and things like that. So that's a little bit about that. Also, in terms of passing, this is just like when you mix, cultures and your skin tones, and you have kids and kids and kids and kids, and eventually you're just so light that you can pass as white. This is seen in some other cultures as well. Like, I know in the Latino cultures, they have this idea of improving the race. So if you Google that, you'll find the same thing, that to improve the race meant to marry someone or have kids with someone who was lighter than you so that you could be lighter, because to be lighter was better. So that is a similarity there. And it's seen in other cultures too, that to be dark was seen as bad and to be lighter was seen as better. And even within the Black culture, you will find all those terms for mixed people, which can be derogatory. So those terms are like high yellow, or those terms are like red bone. And there's like a million other, kind of derogatory terms for mixed people. And they bring up, emotions of being, picked on and called names because of that fact. And then on the opposite side of this, there's a bunch of names for darker skinned people as well. Darky, I've had, when I do this in class, I do this diagram in class, and students tell me these terms, darky and other, negative terms that they've heard themselves, been referred to, that would fall under the Black category. So I just want you to understand that there's a lot that goes into just the term Black, historically speaking, with all the different labels and all the different meanings that can go into it, and all the different reasons why someone would call themselves, African American or Afro, fill in the blank, or Black, or like there's different reasons as to why you would call yourself what you call yourself. So for the racial autobiography paper, if you identify with anything, Black or under this page, you would have to state, what that is. If you are not Black or of African descent, then you, would have your own labels in your own culture that you will include in your racial autobiography paper. So that's just a little bit about that. And I hope that gives you a little bit more clarity and a little deeper understanding of what the term means. Lastly, because someone from another country who was not born here but is Black, like say someone from like Nigeria, right? I had a friend from Nigeria. When she came here, she, didn't really identify with being African American or Black, because here in this country that means so many different things, but she identified with being, Nigerian, right? And so the culture is completely different. So, and that could be from any country where you're, the majority of people are, dark-skinned Black people. Their version of Black is completely different than our word and our history and our everything that comes with being Black, right? So there's a learning curve there for folks who come to the country and realize what this type of the racism that comes with being Black in America. There's like a learning curve between what they experience and how we are understanding, what is normal in terms of what we experience on a daily basis, unfortunately. So that's just a little bit about that, but it's a broad term, so I hope this gives you a little bit more understanding of the term itself.